1,500 architects. I'm one of about 1,500 architects across the United States, Ireland, England, India, that designs technology solutions for our customers. So you come to us with a set of problems, requirements, things like that, whether that be software development, getting to the cloud, getting to a new data center. You know, you have to store the things on your phone. They don't all fit on your phone, so you got to store them somewhere, right? So we design solutions around networking and all the things that make that happen. Because a lot of our customers just don't have the staff, the time, sometimes the talent to be able to design and stay on top of all of the industry trends that are changing, and knowing what's best for their needs, right? So everything's requirements based for the most part. You know, no one comes to us and says, hey, we've got, you know, $2 million we want to spend. We don't know what on. Usually it's a data center refresh or something along those lines. So I'm a data center specific architect. So I spend all of my time looking at server infrastructures, backup infrastructures, software around data center work, some networking, and helping our clients get from physical devices out to Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Azure. Everybody familiar with the cloud? It's just somebody else's computer. But the cloud is obviously a relevant conversation that we have anymore with our customers due to the fact that we have a hardware shortage. Our manufacturers are not producing equipment fast enough for us to meet our clients' needs. So we have to come up with innovative ways, either by finding previously used hardware that we call gray market hardware, or by, you know, helping customers get to a cloud solution so that they can fulfill their clients' needs. Any questions about that so far? What Presidio is, what a solutions architect is? Okay, cool. So Emily gave me a couple of prompts, like how did I get here? I've been at this since 1997. Anyone want to take a guess at how many college or any other programs were available in 1997 to get into a Windows, like a Microsoft Windows, or what we call Microsoft Shop? Anybody have any idea how many opportunities were out there for college or anything like that to be trained for that? If you guessed zero, you're right. There was no curriculum designed around Microsoft Windows. You know, Windows 95, 98, things like that were not Office necessarily solutions. They were for our parents' desktops. So I was lucky. I got to start I got hired in 1999, but I started training just on my own, building computers, developing networks for small businesses, things like that, which were very primitive at the time compared to what they are today, and needed to get into a field. I was working in politics. It's not important. We don't need to go any further into that. Let's just say I wasn't getting paid anything to be able to live. So I applied for a position with State Farm Insurance. Anybody heard of State Farm? Okay, finally we're connecting. So State Farm Insurance in Bloomington, Illinois was looking for engineers or literally anybody who could answer the phone and try to help a global services company take all of these old antiquated giant computer systems and replace them all with Windows servers and laptops and desktops. And again, they couldn't really say you had to have 20 years of experience or 10 years of experience or 1 year of experience, because in 1999, literally no one had much experience with any desktop operating systems, let alone supporting them, or server operating systems that weren't mainframe, right? Mainframe's been around since the 50s and 60s, and it's a very niche technology, but you know, they were trying to get to open systems. So immediately I went from having no computer experience to supporting 17,500 offices, 17,500 servers, 200,000 desktops, 200,000 users, right? So it was kind of baptism by fire, I think is the word or the terminology that we use these days. to, just, or drink from the fire hose, whatever words you want to use. So you learn really quick how all of that worked. So most of my experience initially was on the job. We had some people who were learning along with us how to manipulate Internet Explorer that nobody really uses anymore, how to automate the deployment of desktops and servers, things like that. And as you supported them, or as I supported them with my team, we picked up on how that was done. You start getting experience, it becomes repeatable. 99% of what we were dealing with was account lockups. So we reset a lot of passwords, things like that. And we were at a second level. So what that meant was people would log into every machine at the same time with the same user account, their password would expire. And then this machine would lock out their account next time they changed it. So anyway, that's what I spent all my time doing. Any questions about that first job? Okay. I do have 2 degrees. I do have a bachelor's degree in information technology with a networking focus. And I also have a master's degree in information technology management. And the reason I did that, and the reason it's important in 2022, is because there are a lot more candidates applying for jobs in the technology fields. So that's one way that some of the larger manufacturers, I'm going to use the word weeding out, but that's weeding out. They had to come up with something. So, hey, what's the first thing we could do? We could start requiring a college degree. Okay. That degree could literally be in anything. I know a pilot who has a degree in math. A lot of the times, and I had a director at State Farm. I was there for 10 years, and I had a director towards the end of my time there asked me if I had a degree. I said, no. He said, are you going to get one? I said, I don't need it, and he goes, well, here's the thing. A degree proves, and you guys haven't gotten into this yet, but in your 4 years or more of college, you will meet people, you'll meet instructors. I'm sure you all get along wonderful with your instructors where you're at, but you'll meet instructors you won't necessarily get along with. We all have to take a political science class. Well, I think it's been pretty evident over the last 4 or 6 years that there are a lot of people who disagree with others over politics, right? Something that you never talk about unless you don't want to buy Christmas presents for somebody at Thanksgiving. But it's one of those things that we can definitely disagree on. We'll always disagree on. But there are people that you're going to meet in college who have a specific way to deliver their content, the specific way they want their content fed back to them. And it may not be what you're used to. So you will adapt. You have to adapt, otherwise you don't graduate. So a lot of those degrees, and this is where that director was going, it doesn't matter what degree you get. It proves that you can sit down for 4 years or 6 years or whatever it takes to get through college, and you can step back, set your ego to the side, so to speak, and you can get through those classes and figure out how to get along with other people. And that's what the degree is all about. It proves that you can work with others, that you can adapt, adapt on the fly, sometimes things like that. So while a degree in your field is important, a degree overall is extremely important. Any questions about that? Thoughts? Okay. And honestly, I didn't get a degree until 2013, and I finished my master's in 2018. So I was well along my career path before I decided to do that. But one thing I will tell you is that since technology is ever evolving and always changing, as a matter of fact, when I finish this conversation, I'm going right into some training from, I guess, Dell. Our company has competencies that we have to keep up. So we have to have so many certified people to keep our relationship with Dell or any manufacturer. We deal with, dozens, but we always have to be training. So while I may have finished my degrees and I may have, finished doing formal college things in 2018, I'm still always learning. And that was my point earlier, explaining what my company does, which is we have to be able to know what's current, what changed since the last time we tried to do something, what it is that maybe new that wasn't available 6 months ago for our customers, so that we can go, hey, look, I learned about this. I just did it. I installed it. I supported it, or I had this problem with it. It's great. It's not great, because not everything is perfect. Here are the challenges you're going to have trying to integrate them into what you already own, things like that. So we're always learning every day. There's something that comes up every day where I have to go dig it up. It's something I didn't know about, or something that I should have known about, or something I did know about that I just brushed the surface on and didn't get too deep in it. So we're always learning. Sometimes that's during the day, like today. Some days my calendar is full of meeting clients, and it'll be a different client every hour, like tomorrow, I think. So that training may happen after hours. If I need to lab something out, it may be one of those things where I have to wait until manufacturer's hardware is available. I don't have a data center in my house anymore. If that sounds unusual to have a data center in your house, that's how we all learned. We all went out and found, maybe the last generation of hardware. I had a 42, what they call a 42 rack. It's about 7 feet tall. Actually, I had 2 of them in my basement. It had 30 amp power supplies, twist locks, and sat down and banged on the keyboard all night. So it was all after hours. I destroyed my electric bill doing that, because it's not free to run some of this hardware. That's why a lot of our customers are choosing a cloud perspective, because they don't want to be in the data center business anymore, where they have to pay for electricity, or they have to buy cooling. Cooling is extremely important when it comes to data centers, and some of these units get really, really expensive. So I think that summarizes the education part. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Well, how I guess I skipped over how I got to here. State Farm was a really good place to learn. I spent 3 or 4 years doing the desktop and server support for the agents' offices, then moved into the server support, where all I did was focus on the back-end infrastructure for those offices, plus the other 8,000 servers that the company had to keep the business running, right? They started a bank during that period of time that I don't think exists anymore. They were constantly looking at new ways to develop software on their own without having to buy something that was already pre-made. And they had a team of developers internally, but most of them were offshore. So then when the software came in, we had to scrub it, make sure there was nothing in it that would, compromise the integrity of people's data, things like that. Then I moved to what was called the network operating system team, and the network operating system that State Farm was using was only Microsoft. So the majority, like 98% of everything that was running inside of State Farm was Microsoft. For a brief period of time, all the file services were running on a platform called Novell. Anybody heard of Novell? No? Novell was a competitor to Microsoft at one time. They had their own directory services. They had filers, which is what they were known for at the time. Their file services were better than others. It doesn't exist anymore, as far as I know. And what I can tell you is it was old enough that there was training on it in 1997. They came out with their own email system, things like that. So it wasn't uncommon to log into Windows and to Novell at the same time. I think Emily nodded her head earlier and said that she's probably done you have to log in twice. You can't just log in once. You have to log into Windows and then you choose Novell, or the other way around. I don't remember. But anyway, a little bit of Novell, but most of it was Microsoft. So my job as a network operating system engineer, so to speak, was to work right along Microsoft and point out all of the flaws that we were discovering, not just the ones that the world was discovering. Point out all the flaws that we were discovering in the operating system. And who in the room believes that operating systems do not have problems? Anybody think operating systems do not have problems? Okay. Yeah, you're right. So we were busy, especially with Microsoft on the release cycle of a Windows 2000 and Windows 2003. Anybody heard of Windows NT? No? Okay. there may not be anybody in the room who was alive when Windows NT was released, but that was Microsoft's first attempt at a business operating system. So I went from Windows NT to Windows 2000 in a 2-year period, then Windows 2000 to 2003 in a 3-year period, 2003 to 2008. I never saw 2008 at State Farm because I left before that happened. But anyway, we were telling Microsoft what was wrong with their operating system to the point of having access to their source code, being trained in Windows debugging, which requires source code. So we had a laptop called a crash cart. Anybody ever seen a blue screen of death, a purple screen of death, anything like that? Okay. If your laptop tells you that it stops, I don't think they call it, I think it's Azure colored to support their, or to back up their cloud offering. But if your computer stops functioning, a bug check has occurred and you can plug into it. If it's still happening, they're in a server operating system, you can plug a laptop into it and you can start pulling the configuration or how the server's running to be able to figure out what happened. We went through 3 or 4 months of training on that to be able to plug into a server operating system whenever it bug checked, to be able to determine, what the problem was. So that was kind of neat. Actually, it was a little bit different. It was more reading how people develop software as opposed to developing it ourselves. That was very interesting to see on the back end what the machine language was based on the software that was running on the front end. So yeah, I sat back to back with a couple of Microsoft engineers, and we were always talking about drivers, talking about incompatibility, how our software was running, people having delays pulling files, you name it. We were in the middle of it. So that, gosh, I think I did that for about 2 years. We were always on call as a 24/7 job. There were only 8 of us. So if the, something stopped in the middle of the night, it was up to us to come in and fix it. From there, I moved to a storage team. Obviously the compute part makes it all go. The storage is where everything sits when it's not being used. And we were talking about petabytes of storage before that word even was invented. Very, very large storage systems, very, very complex storage systems that required a lot of design. Choosing the number of disks to meet the manufacturer's requirements for performance, and then clicking 3 buttons to provision it, and then going to lunch, and then coming back and watching it for another 8 hours while it provisioned 4 drives to be able to hand off to a server. So it used to take us close to 24 hours to give somebody enough storage that my phone has. That's obviously changed. We can now do things with the click of a button. We don't have to necessarily design these huge arrays anymore. Everything's virtualized so that, if it's a drive in the system, it gets used. You don't have to worry about whether it meets performance requirements because most of the time we're selling solid state drives anymore. So after that, that's when I left. I decided that I didn't want to attend any more giant meetings and have things slow down for us, right? We used to joke that whenever we were making enormous amounts of progress, somebody would call a meeting to slow us down. So that's the enterprise world. If you guys have seen the movie Office Space, if you haven't, you should. But if you have seen the movie Office Space, it's very, very much like that in the corporate world. TPS reports and all of those things. So put that on your list. I think it's, I think it's suitable for high school. I was trying to think about that for a minute. Yeah, it's probably okay. But anything that happens, having 4 bosses and they have 4 bosses and, what would you do here? I take requirements and from people and give them to the engineers. So I'm a people person. It's very much like that, right? Everybody fighting for a position in the workplace. Some of them are relevant and some of them are not. So that's enterprise. And it was that point where I decided that one of my Microsoft friends started his own company where we went out and design technology solutions for K-12 education. We did that for a year, and then moved to Tennessee. So I've been here since about late 2010, working in this area. Any questions about that rambling on how I ended up in Tennessee? I don't, trust me, I don't want to be awake at 8 o'clock on a Monday either. So I'm with you guys. I guess Emily had asked one of the other prompts, highs and lows of this career. I'll start with the lows, and this, you know, I know a lot of you, so this is a STEM oriented class, right? So some of you are looking at web design, some of you are looking at software design, developing apps, developing, you know, system applications, things like that. Web design, it's pretty easy to tell when you've been successful, right? You click a couple of buttons, you design your thing, you put it out on the internet for all the world to see. And you know, you either have a customer or yourselves or your family or whoever looks at it and goes, hey, wow, that's really cool. That's some immediate gratification, right? You know, your feedback is pretty immediate, and that's kind of world we live in right now. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, you know, social media at our fingertips. So that's cool. Software development, depending upon what you're working on, it could be one of those things that takes a couple of days to build an application, or it could take months, right? And we all know that people are pretty honest when they're hiding behind a keyboard, and you publish something in an app store and either get really positive feedback on how awesome it is, or you get told it's full of bugs or that it shouldn't have been invented. So there are some lows that go along with that. I'll tell you my personal lows. My lows in this industry, especially since I don't do software development and I don't do web design, is that in my experience, I only hear or heard, and I still kind of do, I only heard how well I was doing when I messed something up. So if I took a play, you know, if I executed a command, say at State Farm, and it prevented policyholders from being able to do anything for an hour, and I'm not saying that I ever did that, but if I did, say, do something that prevented, you know, they had multiple tiers of software, so you have to log into something, there's a middleware tier, and then there's an application and data tier that, you know, brings it all together. But if you stop that, then somebody's going to call you and ask you why you did that and tell you that they've noticed that you took it down. So I wouldn't consider that a positive, but it got attention. So we used to joke that the only time that you knew how well you were doing in technology was when you did something wrong. So that was kind of a low, but honestly, at 40, so the company I mentioned, the 2008 company, where I left State Farm and went to work for a friend, it did not last very long. It lasted for about a year, and I was 40 years old at the time. So it was kind of a struggle for me, especially without a degree at that time, wasn't really terribly difficult to find work. There were a lot of jobs out there, but the ones that I wanted required a degree. There was a job, a virtualization job at NASA in Florida. And, you know, it's pretty evident that I'm kind of a nerd a little bit. So I think the holy grail would have been to work at NASA. I knew people who had left, like even Microsoft engineers who had left Microsoft to go work at NASA. And it's like, that seems like a really cool job for me. So I applied for it and never made it through the filter. But I've never made it through other filters like Lockheed Martin or Boeing. Where I had, you know, friends or family who were like, hey, I can help you, you know, get through the system. All you have to do is submit your resume through their portal. And the minute you said you didn't have a degree, they threw your, you know, resume out into the ether. So that I would consider that a low. But there have been some incredible highs too. One thing that we did recently was to develop a process that the manufacturer of this product said wasn't capable of being done online. And it was one of those things where we were working with a financial services institution. It just seems that most of the stock market runs through them. Most of the global economy, they have a tie into. And what it was we were doing could not be disrupted. What it was we were working on, it could not be disrupted. So to insert a piece of hardware into it usually requires a restart of some type where there's a total outage of this thing. So we sat down, and I actually used some experience from State Farm. I managed 30,000 storage switch ports, where the storage plugs in, fiber channel, you know, it's fiber end to end. but recognized something that was happening in the system during the attempt to do this process, because we tested it for months before we did it, and found a process to do it online. It was not disruptive, and nobody told us that until we were finished, because we did it 40 times. We repeated this process 40 times, and it went so well that nobody even knew we did it to even tell us, thanks for doing it. It just went that smoothly. Nobody knew we did it. Nobody really had any impact from it. And we were told after the fact that had it disrupted, had we had any type of outage, it truly would have disrupted the global economy. But being able to figure out things like that are extremely complex, where the people who made it tell you it can't be done, and then you figure out a way to do it, that's kind of a high. The other one is, got this out. The other one's this one. I don't know if you can see it, but it says Infrastructure Engineer of the Year. I don't know, maybe the Nashville Technology Council folks can attest, but I don't work for a specific company, right? Like, I work for a company that works for other companies. So to get an award like that, not working for going to work every day at the same place, I think it's kind of unusual. I've been told that was the first one handed out to a value-added reseller. So that was 2019. I'm trying to remember the project that I used for that. The one I just described, where we saved the global economy by doing that, did not win that year. I'll have to talk to the judges about that, who I don't know, but and that's okay. You can't win every year. It's important for everybody in Nashville to be, or everybody in Tennessee to be recognized for their contributions to technology. But the project that we did was deploying or refreshing in a very quick manner 150 hospitals across the United States for one of the companies based out of Nashville here. It was one of those things where, does anybody know where is that? It's a company called Ingram Micro, and it's north of Memphis. What town is that? Oh, well. But it involved driving out there because everything was put into an integrated rack. All the things were delivered to that site. Their engineers stacked everything, cabled everything to our specifications, did the power, and a little bit of documentation, got put on a truck and then sent to one of these places. It ranged from Tucson, Arizona to Charleston, South Carolina to Florence, North Carolina, South Carolina. I don't know. But a lot of driving and a lot of flying to make sure that those went in well. So that was the project that I described. That's the project that won Infrastructure Engineer of the Year with the Nashville Technology Council. It's a heck of an event. At one of the venues in Nashville. It's always a good time. But anyway, that's kind of the high. I'd say that was the pinnacle of my technology career. I mean, obviously family is important, for children is important. That would be considered a high outside of the technology. Anyway, any questions, thoughts? Any questions for me that you're thinking about before I get into the last bullet?
If you were going, like, if you're in high school now and you're fixing to do what you do, would you go straight to college nowadays because it's more competitive, or would you kind of go into the job market and start working?
Well, the good news is there's a shortage, right? Just like every other industry, there is a shortage in the technology industry of people who are willing to go out and get their hands dirty. So I know Tennessee, we're fortunate that we have the Tennessee Promise to be able to get into a 2-year college at no cost, but after you graduate high school, which is fantastic. But I hate to, I think the thing is that I think we all know that you can't get a job in the field that you want unless you have some experience with it, right? I hate to give my ex-wife credit, but my ex-wife said the best way that you can get into the job that you want is to find somewhere where you can get your hands dirty doing it, right? In my case, like I said, I was building PCs. I had friends who had small businesses that needed some stuff networked together. That job at State Farm came around after I had gotten my hands dirty in some of those things. So I would say if there is a way that you can do that together, participate, take advantage of the college programs that are available in this state, as well as find an internship, find an apprenticeship. I mean, I know that sometimes the Geek Squad is made fun of because, no matter what you send in, it comes back with nothing on it. Like, we're going to wipe your computer. We didn't need it. We're changed the fan, but we wiped it anyway. Getting your hands dirty in those kinds of things. And the best part is you have access to some pretty incredible tools that, like, Emily's team or the National Technology Council provides or has arrangements with, like the National Software School. If you're truly wanting to do development, there may be languages out there that you've never heard of before, but it's extremely popular or extremely needed in the industry, right? Nobody talks about COBOL anymore, but it's still out there. That's been around since the 1960s when the Navy developed it, but you still find it, right? It's not all about Python or JavaScript is still used. I thought that was going out, but I still see it every once in a while. A lot of these things, and if you've done some web design or some software design, there's a lot of ways you can click through and get help with that. Like Google G Suite, you can go build your own website. They do all the back end stuff for you. So all you do is say, I want that, and I want that, and I want that, and I want that. That's not how the real world works. Unfortunately, you have to be able to turn it over very quickly, especially in the software development. And the reason I say that is because it is a constantly changing and evolving thing. And let me dive deeper into that really quick. And I hope I've answered your question, but I'll just give you some ideas about where you need to head. But does anyone have any idea how often Amazon makes updates to their product set, their website, the things that you see in front of you when you go to Amazon.com? Anyone want to take a guess? How often? Give me an idea in minutes. How often they make changes? 50. I missed it.
I said 50 and 100.
50 and 100 minutes. Amazon is refreshing their content and making changes to their site every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, something new is pushed down, product changes, price changes, something like that. So they have developers behind that doing it, right? It's automated, like the whole deployment process is automated, but the people who make those changes, there are people that make those changes. It's not something that's automated as far as what software is being pushed down. So, there's a check-in, check-out process. There's a sanitizing process. Sometimes they test it before they put it out, but the likelihood of that is pretty low considering that they make changes every 10 minutes. So they call that the CI/CD pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, continuous improvement, continuous development, where the industries have gotten so cutthroat that you have to know how to make changes that quickly every 10 minutes, right? Because if you don't do it, if your company doesn't do it in 10 minutes, some other company probably is, and becoming more interesting or more valuable to the customers. Anyway, I would say a blended approach is exactly what I was trying to do, where I was trying to get a 2-year degree, at least get started at the same time that I was doing hands-on work. So there are internships out there. The company that I mentioned that I started with, State Farm, has internships in technology. There are a lot of them out there because sometimes it's very difficult to fill some of those positions. Any other questions or thoughts?
What's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of my job?
Yes.
I would say that the hardest part is keeping track of all the things that are going on. I work for 8 different account managers. So I may have a 9 o'clock meeting with one account manager and a customer who's doing something with the cloud. And at 10 o'clock, I'll have a different meeting with a different account manager with a customer who is putting in a backup solution. I may have to attend a lunch meeting with either a manufacturer and a client, or an account manager and a client who wants to talk about, what their plans are for the next 5 years as they're building out their budget. So I have a notebook, I have an iPad that I can write in. I do daily tasks, I have a daily task tracker inside of Outlook. And then trying to balance that with all of the training that's going on in life. So I'll be 100% transparent. Work-life balance has been very difficult for me. The year that guitar was awarded, I would say that I was probably doing about 95% work and about 5% home, or 5% everything else. So while it hasn't been officially diagnosed, I think I have ADHD, or I think I have to, because if I can't, I have to be able to switch gears from 9 to 10 to 11 to 12, 1 to 2 to 3, 4, kid comes home. Now we're doing homework, high school, we're switching to a little bit of family. So, I'd say trying to balance all of that and keep track of all of that, that is the most difficult part of my day, or adding all of that together. I mean, it's not, like, hey, that task was difficult, or that task was difficult. Usually after 20 some odd years, you don't necessarily feel bad about it. I can tell you what used to be the most difficult part of my day. And that was for 8 or 9 years, I was an implementation engineer. So I would design it and I would get on a plane and install it. Or somebody else would design it, which was the worst, because I had no idea why I was installing what I was installing, but I was getting on a plane blindly and going somewhere. And when people pay another company to bring in expertise, you're expected to be the end all be all, know it all. I mean, theoretically, that's what it is. You need to know everything about everything that you're doing in that case. And I think we all know, and granted, you're probably a couple of years younger than I am, but I think we all know that that's not possible. It's not possible to know everything about everything. So, the hardest part was getting on that plane, going to El Paso, Texas, to do something that someone else built or designed or sold, with a customer who expected you to be perfect, when you walked in the door. So there was a lot of pressure that came with that. I'd say over the last couple of years, we haven't met with people in person a whole lot up until recently. So the same pressure is not there, because I'm sitting at home, I'm comfortable. I'm talking to a camera, or through a camera, to people on the other end, who may be paying attention, may not be paying attention. The pressure's off. I think, where it used to be really, really hectic, really stressful, to be able to do. That was a good question. It was. Hopefully I answered it. Any other thoughts out there?
Does your company have like entry level jobs, and kind of what would that pay, and kind of what would your day look like?
Yeah. So entry level in a value-added reseller usually means that you're going to be working in a help desk area. It doesn't mean it's the lowest paid, because they have multiple tiers where you will get paid more as you advance through your career there. But mainly what you're doing is you're taking calls from customers who, in our case, in my company's case, has a contract with us to do that. They call it managed services. So you have a suite of employees that need password resets, or have security issues, or need laptops refreshed or built, or new applications, or they're just having a technology problem. In value-added resellers, that's where you would start. I don't know about the pay. I'm guessing that you're probably looking in the range somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000 a year to start, right? It can grow into 6 figures. It absolutely can in that area, especially as you advance in your career. Some of you may want to be managers. Some of you may not like people, like me. No, I'm just kidding. Some of you may not like people and not want to manage people, or be just totally fine doing the things and not necessarily managing the people who do the things. So that's where you would start in probably any value-added reseller. But manufacturers, for instance, technology manufacturers, you would probably start in a sales role. They have inside salespeople. They have technical sales resources that are not necessarily paid on commission like a salesperson would be. And then for software developers, there are companies around here who are assisting others with developing apps. I can't remember the name of the company. A friend of mine worked there in Brentwood that helped you take your ideas for, say, an iPhone app and turn that into something where it's published, it's downloadable, whether it be free or paid. But that was their goal. And that's pretty entry level too, right? You get good at what you're doing and you can start helping other people to do their things. That help? All right. Any other questions? What's the average age that I'm speaking with? About 17, 16, 15?
Probably 16.
Okay, cool. I was asked if I had advice for my 15-year-old self. And if I did, what would it be? And I have advice for my 15-year-old self. I'm just not sure my 15-year-old self would have the capability to understand what I was about to say, which is, and I know you've only lived 15, 16 years of your life, but things are constantly changing. You may have your eyes set on, I want to do this. I'm going to do this in 5 years. I want to do software development. It's going to be on Python. It's going to be, I'm going to build the coolest stuff that's ever hit the marketplace. And then you find out in 5 years or 3 or 4 years that Python is a dinosaur. It's been replaced by 12 different other languages that are much easier and come with a wizard and do things like that. So really the message that I would have given myself would be prepared for change and be prepared to adapt to it. So open-mindedness, and don't live in a place where the weed whackers run at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. Sorry about that. I hope nobody heard that. But that I think that's the thing. And I think since you all are looking at technology careers, you do understand that things change very fast. What was popular yesterday may not be popular today, and what was popular 5 years ago, nobody even remembers. So that would be the overall goal, is to be open, be willing to adapt, figure out what it takes to make change, whether that be just personally or professionally, because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen very quickly. And you might get left behind if you're not willing to adapt. So anyway, any other questions for me?
Anybody? No?
No. I don't know how I filled the last time. The last time I talked or I spoke with the class, I somehow filled the full hour without anybody asking questions. And I don't know if it's the Monday morning versus a Thursday morning type of thing, but not quite as talkative today. So anyway, if anyone thinks of anything, any questions, Emily knows how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, actually, Brian, I have a question that I always like asking all of our speakers. And it's just basically, in your opinion, what tech skills do you think are in the greatest demand currently and will be in the future?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm sorry I didn't hit on that without being prompted. I think today the biggest skill is the skill of knowing how to help people get into the cloud. And I know that sounds very broad, but there's like 5 different ways that at least Amazon has documented to help people get to the cloud. You can pick up what they are running and just drop it in there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can also take advantage of software as a service, which means that you're not using your stuff anymore. You may not even be running your own software or controlling it anymore. The manufacturer of that software is delivering it to you. That is also totally acceptable. They call that software as a service. You could also get into what's called platform as a service, where you're not running your own databases. anymore. You're running your own applications, but Amazon offers or Google or Azure, Microsoft offers something that would handle that for you. Databases are the primary example of that. File systems are another primary example of that, where someone else is running it for you. You're paying them. You don't worry about patching it anymore, but you need to know how to get there. Another component of that is to rewrite everything that you're moving to the cloud to take advantage of cloud services. You may have something that's highly transactional that's in your own data center that you want to run in Amazon or Azure. Well, Amazon and Azure have a process where you don't necessarily have to buy their equipment or buy time on their equipment as far as like permanently, like what would be in Amazon as an EC2 instance or block storage behind it or anything like that. You would actually use their Lambda service, which is something that does nothing but transactions all day long, and you just buy time on it. They call that refactoring. So you take what you're running today and you refactor it, you rebuild it to work natively in the cloud. And then there are definitely financial aspects to that too. Being able to identify what a customer is going or what your business is going to spend in the cloud. There's a funny story about that, which was about 3 or 4 years ago. Every chief information officer in every company on the planet developed or designed a cloud first strategy. We're not buying any new hardware. Everything's going in the cloud. It's going to happen tomorrow. Do it. And then the first month they got their bill and they were astronomical. So what everyone has found out is that not everything should go in the cloud, especially if you expect to be able to be budget friendly, because the cloud is not always the best place. So a new word came out to define the process of taking what's in the cloud and putting it back in your environment. They call that repatriatizing. I guess if I'm going to come up with words or use words, I probably should know what they are. Repatriatizing. So you repatriate your data from the cloud back into your data center. And generally speaking, after that little exercise about 5 years ago of cloud first, about 50% of the workloads that were put into a cloud platform have been put back. They've been brought back because they were either not economical or they didn't perform properly. So what I'm getting at here is, and the reason why I believe this is the most important aspect of the IT field right now, is because everybody, it doesn't matter who it is, what size of business, small, medium, or large, enterprise, everybody can benefit in some way from putting their things out in Amazon or Azure or Google.
Excellent, thank you.
What's the normal answer for that? What's the most popular answer for that?
I usually cloud, anything cloud as far as what's current and future, and then network. So those are the two.
Our company has a motto: no network, no cloud. And that's going to be important, right? So you have to take those skills along with it, because somehow you have to get to it. It doesn't just happen. So
yeah, excellent. Any other questions from our students?
Cool.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with everyone. And Mr. Taylor and your class, thank you for joining us. If anybody needs to connect, you can reach out to NTC and we can get you whatever information you need, and we can get you, connected with Brian. If you have any other questions, I can definitely forward those to him. Otherwise, have a safe and happy Monday, everyone.
Thanks for your time. Yep. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.